Hi everyone, this is Dr. Essie Stacey, helping you to be well. Hi everyone, welcome back. Yeah, thank you for giving me the thumbs up. I'll wait a few seconds for everyone to log in. We're doing Why Am I Sick? The Gut. Um, and some of you might have heard some of it before. I know those of you that have been with me for a few years will have heard this, but you wouldn't have heard it in this way. So I'm hoping that you're going to get some something new out of this. I'm hoping that I've also simplified things a little bit. And through the years, I realized that you need you're gonna need to go through this stuff for really like 18 months. You're going to hear the same stuff. You need to hear the same stuff over and over again for really about 4 times before it begins to sink in. And that's because really what I'm doing is I'm presenting something that is really quite new in terms of the way we think about our health. It's not the standard way that a doctor would think about health. So that my hierarchy of health is not something that doctors are taught. My son Luke's a medical student and he's not taught in this way at all. I'm very much talking from the perspective of looking at terrain. If you view your body as the terrain, and if you like, the organs are going to work within that terrain. And if you look after your terrain, the plants grow nicely. Yeah. So I kind of mix my metaphors there a little bit, but I'm sure you understand. I'm looking at how we keep our baseline health. Our body's meant to regenerate. It's meant to look after itself. And so if I can teach you how to look after yourself, then you shouldn't have the appearance of sickness. And I know it's a bold statement to make, but I'm gonna the reason behind hierarchy of health is to just show you how we get sick. So if you can understand that, then also you can understand how to retrace those steps as well. So if you're new to the YouTube platform, you can type messages in to say hello, like I will say hello. And so what I've got the talk is meant to last around 40 minutes, but with comments and things like that, it'll probably be an hour. So the first bit is a recap of hierarchy of health in general and toxins. And then we move into the gut and into TEF. So if you've got the newsletter, then I'll be explaining what TEF is. TEFF. Not TED, I was about to write TED. I've got my glasses on. TEF. So I'll be explaining what TEF is. So, but this works interactively. So if you ask questions, then I will pause after we've got a few questions lined up and answer those, and then move on again. So I am hoping, we've got a nice number of people signed in. So I'm moving on to my iPad view and my little round face. So why am I sick? The gut. Right. So this bit is the recap. So if you have not listened to Why Am I Sick? Hierarchy of Health, that's on my YouTube channel and it's free of charge. So that's sort of the overview of the whole thing. So you can go watch that and share it with your friends, etc. Then the Why Am I Sick? Toxins is what I did last time, and I very much talked about am I a car? And this really goes to the idea Sorry, just maneuver. There we go. This just goes to the idea of um, traditional medicine, which gives you a pill for your ill. So for example, if my headlights are not working, I'm gonna get a headlight pill. I'll replace the headlight. If the exhaust is not working, I'm gonna get something for the exhaust. And that is the traditional way of looking at disease. If you've got a mole, you're going to have that mole removed. If you have got upset stomach, you're going to get upset stomach medicine. If you've got problems with your lungs, you're going to get lung medicine. And that's not wrong. However, if we look at how we arrived at that point, for example, if it's a lung problem, we can say that yes, to a certain extent, there's a problem in the lung, but there's also a problem in the rest of the body, because the rest of the body's not taking care of itself, and therefore allows the lung to get poorly. So for example, the immune system isn't just in the lung, and it's the immune system that's likely to be having issues. And so this analogy of a car does work, and it is the way mainstream medicine works. And it's also, we all love our oils as well, essential oils. And sometimes oils, sometimes we think about things in terms of systems and oils as well. My way of looking at things is slightly different, and it's come about, and I mentioned this in the other webinars, really very much come about because of having to help my family, to help my 3 children who had varying degrees of illness, and so that took me on a journey from the car to the gut. I noted that the gut was central to their health problems, and once I began to look at the gut as a more central feature, I began to understand that a lot of illness does sort of have its seat in the gut. And once I then took my thoughts from taking care of the children to my patients, I began to see and find that lots of people have issues with their gut. And my patients, I'm a sport and exercise medicine doctor, my patients have joint problems in general. More and more I see patients with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, that type of thing. But even in these types of patients, I'm seeing that the root issues lie in the gut. And I began to think, why has everyone got a bad gut? And so now you see a lot of people writing about gut health and the microbiome, and rightly so. But I've slightly moved on to ask that question, why has everybody got a bad gut? And that led me to the hierarchy of health. And the hierarchy of health, the blue is actually water. I've sort of adapted it a little bit. So the blue is water. And it starts with you and your DNA. This is you shining brightly, representation, shining brightly in the universe. That's how you're supposed to be. You're supposed to, give off good rays out into the universe. And I'll take that off. And there you go. And then along comes some nasty toxins. And that's the blue layer in the hierarchy of health. And the toxins have an effect on the DNA. And also they have an effect on the green layer, which is the gut. So they can have an effect on that as well. The toxins, of course, also have an effect on the water. So the toxins, and we'll go over again just how they have that effect on the DNA and the damage that they do. So they can damage your gut. So when the gut is unhappy, it then causes issues with the immunity layer. So this is the gut layer, the green layer, and then you have the immunity layer. Now the immunity layer is made up of inflammation and infection. I think in the coming years, we're going to see that slow growing, low grade infection is present and is a co-partner in many diseases. It's really not recognized at the moment, but I think we're going to be seeing the acknowledgement of that in coming years. So this immunity, this red layer, is made up of infection and inflammation. So when the gut is unhappy and unhealthy, what it does is it not only does it allow infection to enter into the body from the outside, but it also triggers what's called human endogenous retroviruses that are encoded in our DNA. Now, we don't know enough about that process, but it certainly is a thing, for want of a technical term. So the gut, the gut is an immune organ. It's an organ like the spleen, if you like. It's more important, arguably, than the spleen as an immune organ. And so when it goes wrong, it then creates this derangement in inflammation and infection, which I call the immunity layer. Now, the body tries to deal with that because this process over your life is a silent process. You wouldn't know that maybe the toxin assault has happened. You wouldn't necessarily know that the gut is unwell and fighting the toxins. And what happens is the body then uses its nutrients, the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, to try to dampen down the inflammation, deal with the infection. So this yellow orange layer I call the deficiency layer. And it's called that because you begin to become deficient in things like your Vit D, like your vitamin C, like your magnesium, like your B vitamins, like your antioxidants. Your thyroid gland complains, your adrenal gland starts to complain. So as you're dealing with this chronic immune issue, inflammation, infection, the body goes through this varying sort of degrees of deficiency. And that plays out in your body and your DNA until you get the purple layer, which is the symptoms. And those symptoms are actually what you go to your doctor and be diagnosed with. So that might be diabetes. You might be diagnosed with. You might be diagnosed with cancer. Might be Alzheimer's disease. It might be that you're overweight. It might be osteoporosis. So these are diagnoses, labels, if you like, that you might get, but they are symptoms of everything that's going on in these previous layers. The purple layer are symptoms of stuff that's been going on in those layers. So if you can grasp then that your symptom, whatever you want to call it, is a product of these layers further in, then you can start to think about how you might tackle those layers and how you might bring your body back into some kind of equilibrium. So as I said, we did toxins already, and I mentioned in the toxins webinar that the main toxins that I come across in patients are pesticides and insecticides, that type of thing that are sprayed, heavy metals, molds, and petrol type derivatives. So I do a test which I call a toxins test, and it basically picks up the toxins that are either attached to your DNA or that your white cells have become sensitive to. And I used to do urine tests where we measured toxins in the urine as well, and these categories of toxins would come up time and time again. Where do they come from? They're coming from water. Is a really good place for them to come from, and food, water and food, for pesticides, and maternal transmission, transgenerational, um, heavy metals from teeth, tattoos, food, water, maybe maternal transmission also. Molds from wet buildings, damp buildings, and dried stored food. So that if you have been on my diet to detox program, the reason you take out those dried foods that could have been stored is because of the mold potential. And this is so common. Molds are so common, and they can make people so unwell and give you weird symptoms. So the other thing being petrol derivatives like plastics. That's a very common one, and that can be in water. It's a common place to find it in water, but also fabrics. Fabrics that we wear in the house, in the car, things like that. So toxins are everywhere, and so for me, the step after looking at the gut is to ask, why is the gut, or how is the gut injured? And it's through these toxins. And few people are talking about this. Certainly in conventional medicine, people just aren't talking about dealing with toxins in our environment, and they are in our environment. And if we are going to get ourselves well, our families well, then we have to pay attention on what is making the gut ill, and it is usually these toxins. So what mechanisms of harm do they have? Well, they do the adduct thing. Add is they get added to the DNA, the toxins I'm talking about now. They're called DNA adducts. They're stuck to the DNA, and they then affect the functioning of the genes. Endocrine disruption, EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals. Basically, they mimic your hormones. So they'll mimic your thyroid, they'll mimic your testosterone, they'll mimic estrogen. Many of the plastics, I talk about this on the toxins webinar, but one of the things that I noted was in London was young men coming with man boobs, and it wasn't on purpose. It was, I could see boobs. And when you look at London water, many water, estrogens and are in there, which could cause that directly, but other things like plastics, etc., behave as endocrine disrupting chemicals, and therefore switching on the wrong hormones. So yeah, do have a look at that. Look at the toxins webinar. Also on the new website, the Dr. Essie website, I have a whole module on toxins, and I go into much more depth in bite-sized chunks, but just cover more things, looking at the effects of these endocrine disrupting chemicals. So what is the other mechanism of harm? You've got sensitivity, so your body can become sensitized to the toxin, and that may be the toxin in association with the food, so that when you eat the food, the body reacts against that food, even if the food is a good food. And what else? It directly harming the gut. So that takes us, that's sort of the preamble from the last webinar. So do ask questions. I've stunned everybody into silence, so say something, and then let me know that the chat thing is working, and I haven't frozen or something, before we move on to the next bit. So I'll wait just to see whether we've got any questions coming up on that. Has everybody understood? Um, so let's have a look at that. Regina, yes, I send the newsletter by email. And then Lisa's asking, would a water filter like a Brita be good to get rid of plastics and mercury before drinking? I think anything is better than nothing. And usually the more expensive you go, the better they are at getting rid of the toxins. So yeah, there's various. I know there's some people on here that are using water filters. Perhaps you could say which ones you're using. And so there's, I don't want to get too commercial over it, but there are different types of systems. You can get a system put on your mains. You can get the reverse osmosis put on your mains. You can use, like you say, the Brita type ones, the Berkey water filters. They seem to be a good mid-range filter. I have a good friend, Henrik Hilker, who deals with Adit water. That's another whole way of looking at water and structuring water so that the toxins don't do so much harm. So yeah, there's different mechanisms. My new website, Regina, will be dressie.com. It's the same as the old one, but it's not ready yet. It'll just seamlessly switch over when it's time. Good. So let's move on to the gut a little bit. So we'll do a little bit of talking and keep asking your questions. So with the gut, again, people will have seen this before. So gut dysbiosis, for those that are brand new. So I'm aware that some people are really old hat with this and some people it's brand new. Some people need refreshing. So the gut dysbiosis is a derangement, the dys, and biosis is in the bugs and the microbes. So a happy gut is one where the colon cells, these are colon cells, they're happy and nicely packed together. There's no gaps in between them. That's a happy gut. And a happy gut is caused when we have a good microbial profile. So good microbes are in the abundance. I would say good is that it's an oversimplification, and really we don't understand much about we don't understand the extent of gut microbes. There's so much to know. The science is relatively new. The Human Microbiome Project started in 2009, and normally you're going to need about 50 years of research before you're beginning to understand a subject. So, we don't understand gut microbes in their entirety. But there are principles that we do know, and that is if there's a abnormal sort of profiled derangement in the gut microbes, then you get leaky gut. We know it as leaky gut, but what actually is happening is instead of the colon cells being packed together, they develop these gaps in them, in the tight junctions, and then you get these alien invasions happening into your body. These are foodstuffs these yellow things would supposed to go through through the cell and come into the body through proper means. They'll get digested, or they'll get broken down, or they'll be brought through the proper means, or they'll be told to go down into the poo. But if you've got holes in your guts like that, this stuff will come through and it will come to the attention of these guys. And these are the ninja peas. Now, ninja peas, remember, I call them ninja peas so that you remember what they are. They are immune cells. I could call them macrophages, dendritic cells, but you wouldn't remember those. Ninja peas are your immune cells. They recognize these aliens. The posh word for that is xenobiotic substances, and they gobble them up. And in that gobbling up process, they cause inflammation. So it's the immune cell. When you have a cold, a virus, the immune cells gobble them up, and it's the immune cells that create the symptoms of the virus. So the shivering, the runny nose, the fatigue, that's the immune cells that are doing that, not actually the virus. And so the immune cells get activated. So you imagine if you've got this situation and it's happening all the time, stuff getting through, it means that your immune cells are switched on all the time. Your ninja peas are always switched on, always trying to deal with these invaders that have come through these open gates. Now, what then happens, remember the hierarchy of health, is that the body, the gut is going to say, no, I can't do this. And you're going to create a layer, that inflammation layer. That's going to become apparent. So gut dysbiosis creates inflammation. And that inflammation, remember the immunity layer, is then what then triggers all of these disorders. Whatever, remember the purple layer on the outside, doesn't matter what the name of it is. If it's a chronic disease, then it's likely to stem from inflammation. So my patients often come with a joint problem, but if I ask them questions, for example, about their brain, i.e., do they have a bit of brain fog or fatigue, often they would say yes. If I ask them about their gut, they may or may not say, yeah, I have kind of IBS type symptoms or constipation. Constipation, very, very common in my patients with joint problems. Or they might have acid indigestion, acid reflux, acid indigestion. They might be on indigestion pills. They've come with their joints, but I ask them about this and they often would say yes. Not always, but often. If I ask them if they might have trouble losing weight, for example, that would be there. Or they might already have diabetes or a strong family history of it. Then what about the ninja peas themselves? The ninja peas themselves would reveal an issue if, for example, if you've got a chronic illness and you're chronically fatigued, chronically unwell, but you never get a cold. Often that means that the ninja peas have just had enough. They're clapped out. Or it might be about cancer, or it might be about a chronic inflammatory condition like eczema, like asthma, hay fever, like an autoimmune problem. So you get this chronic inflammation related to the gut manifests itself in chronic illnesses, and they may be little, they may be big. And people say, oh, I'm just getting old. Aging is caused by inflammation. It's called inflammaging. And so when we look at that, then it means that if we deal with inflammation, then we can turn back that clock, maybe that aging clock. So let's look at the interaction. I call it the axis of interaction. There's you and your genetics interacting with the gut microbes. Now it can seem really strange that why should my health be directly impacted by gut microbes? Gut microbes they have at least 10 times more genetic material in our gut than we have in our genes. What does that mean? It means that a good microbial profile, so good microbes, will have a positive effect on our genes. Negative microbial profile will have a negative effect on our genes, and that is called epigenetics. Epigenetics means a switch. So you can switch on and off your genes. So if you've got a bad gene for diabetes or something, the gut microbes creating inflammation will be able to more easily switch that gene on. And the reverse, you can switch it off as well. Now, a switched on gene will also be sent down through the generations as well. So that's generational switched on genes. So this axis of interaction, which includes these gut microbes, is vitally important. So if the gut microbes are so important, these little, I still can't get my head around it, but I'm trying to understand why it's important to have gut microbes. Because when we're born, our gut is sterile. There's no microbes in the gut. And you think, okay, that's the way you want to be, hygiene theory, let's just make sure there are no bugs anywhere. But in fact, what the research shows is that the microbe, they've done a lot of research on mice, and they're called germ-free mice. They breed these mice that are sterile. And what they see is that the mice without any microbes are not healthy. So, and then if you transplant into those mice a profile from a healthy mouse, then the unhealthy sterile mouse gets better. And so it's true that we need those microbes, but what's going around in my head is like, why were we created that way? And shouldn't we have more of a relationship with these microbes? We just take them for granted. Should we be engaging with them somehow, looking after them? It's an interesting, it's fascinating to me. So anyway, so if whatever affects the gut microbes then affects ours, then of course the next step is to understand what affects the gut microbes. And this is my TEF acronym. So I'll pause there for any questions and just answer any questions that have come across. So looking at the toxins, looking at the water. So Regina says she uses Aqua Through. What does that do, Regina? And is it a reverse osmosis? Is it tabletop type thing? AquaTrue. So perhaps you can look at that. Like I say, kind of the sky's the limit in terms of water filters. You can get really expensive ones. But any questions on what we've talked about so far on the gut? Give me a thumbs up if you're understanding it. If you're not understanding it, is it over your head? Any terminology, any words that you don't understand, then you could just type them into the comment box as well, and I'll explain those as well. Okay, so no questions. I'll move on then. So let's have a look. So what is TEF? So TEF is the acronym for toxins, exercise. So we're looking at the stuff that affects the gut microbes. So toxins does. Exercise affects gut microbes. Food affects gut microbes. And frequency affects gut microbes. So I'm going to go over all of those. Obviously, I've done toxins in the ones before, and I'll just briefly mention it, but then we'll go over the others. So let's look. Toxins. So I've mentioned these before. These are the main toxins that come up: the pesticides, heavy metals, molds, petrol type things. I just wanted to mention this. Remember, I kept talking about this generational thing. In the toxins webinar, I do mention this again, that one study found 287 toxins in cord blood. That's frightening. And I'm sure that's not a stable thing either. I'm sure if you look 20 years ago, it was probably half that or something. And, you know, we're getting more and more. And it's true that the children are beginning to suffer from ill health younger and younger. What I see in my clinic is some of the illnesses that might have affected someone who is 50 or something appears in someone who's 25. And I believe that's due to the toxins. We are more toxic. We're living in more of a toxic situation. So let's move on to exercise. And again, we take exercise for granted, really, don't we? We don't really, it's not a pill, is it? It's not an oil, it's not a therapy, but it is really useful. It's really useful, it's cheap, and it's easy to do. So if you, down here, for those that don't know, at the bottom here are links to studies. And so if you want the slides, do email me. I'll send you the slides. And you can, I think even in the PDF, you should be able to click on the link and it will take you to the actual papers where I get this information from. And so in this, some of them, these are reviews, so a few studies in one paper. They looked at exercise and showed that exercise, and I'll explain all this, reduced PCB microbiome damage in exercising rodents. So what does that mean? Basically, they've accepted that PCBs, i.e. plastics, polychloride bromide or something like that, plastics will damage the gut microbiome, right? So they've acknowledged that. So that what they do is they use PCBs to damage the gut of a rodent, a mouse or a rat. First of all, they create the damage, and then they'll take a group of rodents and say you exercise, and another group where they don't exercise, and look to see whether the exercise helps the gut. And exercise did. So exercise reduced the damage caused by the plastics. So we can help ourselves by doing a little bit of exercise. What does exercise do? Exercise increases BOB. Now, those of you that have heard me speak before will know that that's beta hydroxybutyrate, which is a ketone, or a ketone body is another word for it. It's a ketone like you would produce when you're fasting. And what they do is they heal the colon. They are food. Ketones are food for the colon. So exercising increases BOB. One of the studies looked at rugby players, and they found that the rugby players had fewer lactobacillus than the normals. Now, what does that mean? Lactobacillus is in your probiotics that you take, right? It's supposed to be good for you. So does it mean that if you're exercising vigorously that can dampen down the good microbes? It could be. That could be one solution, one answer to that. Another study showed women that were exercising and did at least 3 hours a week of exercise produced more BOB. And they talk in the paper that producing BOB is associated with better heart health. So it's better heart health, it's better colon health, it reduces inflammation, it keeps the immune system well. However, the problem with these exercise studies is that the changes are not uniform. You can't say if you do an hour of exercise, it will increase BOB by 10% or something like that. Because everybody's different and everyone's starting point is different. Everyone's toxic load is different. Everyone's engines are configured differently. But some of the things they think that a longer duration and higher intensity I would say in certain individuals may change the diversity. So the more diverse the gut microbes, the more different types of microbes there are in your gut, the healthier your gut is. Um, but they say that lean individuals their guts behave differently to obese individuals. So basically saying, look, we don't have all the answers, but it does seem to be that when you exercise, you produce Bob, and Bob is good for you. How much? In practice, what I find is that every individual can find their level based on how they feel when they're exercising. So if you should be exercising and it makes you feel energetic afterwards. If you're exercising, you're clapped out you're clapped out for weeks on end, it means you've overdone it. You're more likely to be, I think, like those rugby players who are pushing themselves like elite athletes. So I'm not saying rugby players are elite athletes, they're training hard, but you need to find your level of exercise. So for one person, the amount of exercise that keeps them perked up might be an hour 5 times a week. Another person, it may be 10 minutes every day. So you have to find your level, because if you've got gut dysbiosis, if you've got your immune layer hyperactive, if you've got the deficiency layer hyperactive, you won't be able to cope with much exercise, because exercise in itself creates inflammation. I think that's what that rugby player study is saying. And you need to be able to dampen down that inflammation after you've exercised, and then the body rebuilds itself stronger to cope with the next bout of exercise. But if you haven't got the wherewithal to do that, then actually you're just creating more inflammation and you're just getting more and more tired. So find the level of exercise that is right for you. What next? So the next one in the TEF is food. And what types of food? We talk about the food so much that this should be an easy one. So types of food are probiotic food. And of course, I mentioned probiotic food a lot. Now, most of these subjects are going to be on the new website. There'll be literal modules on each category, so you can delve in a lot deeper into each category. But briefly, so probiotic food is, the probiotic bit is where the food itself has bugs, microbes, good ones. And those bugs help to feed the colon cells. They may produce Bob themselves, or they may produce things like vitamins. Like vitamin K2 is produced by a probiotic. So probiotic foods, they're going to be good for you. I would say though that if you've got severe gut dysbiosis, then, and so if you imagine that those cells, let me see if I can draw them. You've got the cells, the colon cells, and these bugs, this is inside your body, and this is in your gut here. Now these bugs are supposed to be in the gut, right? They're supposed to be here. That's where they do their good work. But if that bug, let me give it a colour, if that bug ends up going through the gap and into your body's not going to like it. And you're going to get the ninja peas coming to attack. Or this microbe may cause infection in the body. So this is really, important to understand. So with my diet to detox, often what I do in the first phase is I don't give probiotics that particularly do damage. You can also have something called SIBO, which is small intestinal bowel overgrowth, and that's where you've got all the bugs in the upper gut. The good microbes are supposed to be in the colon, in the lower gut. You're not supposed to have them up here. And people that have them in the upper gut, who then take a probiotic, those probiotics kill off the bugs in your upper gut, and then create inflammation up there. And if you're already unwell, then it just makes you more unwell. So we have to manage that if you are unwell, you're returning to health. So in phase one of diet to detox, you're basically going to remove toxins from your system and allow your system to calm down. You start to increase the types of probiotic foods in phase two. So anyway, let's move on again to foods. Prebiotic foods, they are foods that feed the colon. Again, they're going to feed the colon cells, but they're not microbes. They're not bugs. They're things like fibrous stuff, fiber, that would feed and spices, and they would feed the colon cells. Again, I could go on and talk for hours on each individual topic, but these will be covered in the website. Fats. What about fats? Again, fat will be covered in the modules, but just briefly, we know that trans fats, hydrogenated fats, adulterated fats, margarines are in general bad for you. The trans fats, or the hydrogenated fats, the adulterated fats, will harm your gut microbes. The vitamins, the fats like A, D, and E. So some of you will know that if I add a K on the end there, A, D, and E are fat-soluble vitamins. A, D, E, and K are all fat-soluble vitamins. Now, A, D, and E are good, and the C are good for your gut microbes. Now, the point of me mentioning that they're fat-soluble is that you have to eat them with fat. You have to take them into your body with fat. Otherwise, the body doesn't do anything with them. Your gut doesn't do anything with them. So where do we get these things from? So vitamin A and E can come from liver, from eggs, fish oils. Think raw red palm oil. It's a wonderful source of these, amazing source of A and E. D can come from fish oils. D can come from mushrooms left in the sun. D can come from supplements also, and the sun, of course. And then sugars. So sugars, yes, we want to reduce the amount of refined sugars, definitely. Sugars will make yeasts and things, the bad ones, because they're not all bad, will help them to grow quicker. So if you start off with leaky gut and you're feeding it lots of sugars, you're going to make those bad microbes even worse. Having said that, if you've got a good gut, a bit of sugar every now and again is not going to harm you. And sugar will feed the good microbes in your food as well. So if you're creating, you've often seen me add sugar to things where I'm fermenting, because it will feed those microbes as well. And then, of course, water. Water's to do with the toxins, which will harm the gut microbes. If you're cooking in bad water, etc., that's going to have a bad effect. I don't know enough about structured water and the amazing properties of structured water to know what effect it has on the gut yet. So hopefully that will come. So I've done the food. Any questions on that? Any questions? Let's just have a look. So Martha said, will we discuss how to bring healthy balance to the gut microbes? This is what we're discussing. And I think Regina's talking about cleaning. Any other questions on the food? It looks like a spider has crawled over there, but hopefully you were concentrating as we were going along. Any other questions before I move on? Stunned you all into silence again. The last one in the acronym is frequency. So what am I talking about frequency? She's talking about frequency again. What does it mean? So So there's two aspects of frequency. Let's have a look. There's the good and the bad, right? Um, so let's just have a look at frequency. So we know that radiation treatment for cancers um, can ruin the gut. So if you have, radiotherapy, that's frequency, right? It's a frequency generated treatment, and that can cause dysbiosis in the gut. So that's it. Kind of when I start talking about EMFs and things, people think, oh well, is that really a thing? But that's why I just want to just bring us back to some science that is used all the time, and that's radiation. Radiotherapy is frequency. And so studies, and again, the studies are down here if you want to have a look at them. EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, such as 5G, and I believe there's different frequencies that you can deliver 5G. I'm not an expert on this by a long shot, but I understand from what I've read, but I don't know how far true this is that delivered at certain frequencies will increase the growth of pathogenic microbes. And what keeps coming back is there are ways to modify this fifth generation of EMFs, and the way it is modified is by the way it is delivered. I don't understand the science enough to give you more information on that. That's what I understand. I don't know whether that's true or not, but the papers were suggesting that this fifth generation delivered at this frequency causes increase in growth of the pathogenic microbes. So that's a bit sad, isn't it? However, let's look at on the good side. What can we do? Far infrared. So we know about infrared saunas. So these infrared saunas, this infrared technology, which is frequency, improves microbial patterns. And then this is a nice one. Kombucha, yes, it's true, improves the negative effects of EMFs in rats, of course, in rats, but that's pretty amazing if that also is true in humans. Pretty amazing. So yeah. So I this is where I plug my favorite kombucha with it, which is shameless plug here. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. No. Smooth Cultures Brewery Limited, and she's on Instagram. It's Gloria Ruth. She makes the best kombucha in town. So get some kombucha to protect you from the EMFs, and then remember our thoughts, our frequency. This sometimes freaks people out, but you can measure them now. People don't have a problem that you can, they put electrodes on your head and measure your EEGs, but they're measuring frequency. Our thoughts have frequency, and a frequency will affect your gut. If kombucha can affect your gut, then surely the thoughts can. We know that, if we get nervous, we want to run off to the toilet. That nervousness, it maybe the frequency is translated into something that affects the vagus nerve. However it happens, thoughts are frequency. And I never tire of talking about these studies that looked at focused intent. Think about deep thought, think about meditation, think about prayer. It changes water. It changes the electromagnetic frequency around water. Focused intent plus heart coherence. So there I'm thinking, think happy thoughts, right? Think happy, lovely things. So focus your intent, your deep thoughts, your deep position of relaxation on something wonderful. And then focus your intent on whatever it is that you need, your gut, your health, whatever. And that changes your DNA. And I presented those papers in previous webinars. So thoughts are frequency. that frequency is not just Wi-Fi. Good. So diet to detox. So any questions before I go on? Let's see. Martha said, what about prebiotic and probiotic supplements? Absolutely. Oops. Absolutely. I am not a huge supplement fan. But they do work as well. They are an assistance to you as you trying to regain health. So yes, probiotic and prebiotic supplements. The probiotic supplements that I tend to use, in case anyone is interested, is I use two different price range. One is called Peak Biotic, and the other one is called Megaspore Biotic. Megaspore Biotic. I use those two, and the reason I use them is because they're spores. So you're not giving a live microbe. So remember what I was saying about giving those live microbes and then them ending up, in your system or attacking the microbes that shouldn't be there, but they're in your upper gut. These spores tend not to do that. And this one's relatively cheap, the Peak Biotic, and this one is more expensive. Any other questions on the gut? So I want to mention diet to detox because if you are therefore trying to regain health, then phase 1 is where you remove the toxins. So you remove the toxins from your system in phase 1. And that allows, like the lymphocytes, the ninja peas, it allows them to settle down. They can become they can become sensitive. And by removing the toxins so that they forget that they are sensitive, then that helps your immune system, to calm down a little bit. You remove the toxins from your environment. People can still feel quite unwell just removing the toxins, and that's because you are no longer feeding those microbes. Now what happens is toxins are in your environment and the body responds by trying to deal with those toxins. So partly what happens is you get this whole crew of microbes, including things like parasites, which are trying to deal with the toxin. They also make you ill, but actually they're there because they're trying to deal with the toxins that are in your system. So it's known that parasites are there. They will try and sort of gobble up heavy metals and things. And then when you remove them from your system, when you no longer have them, they start dying off because they've got no food. And then you have that die-off reaction. So this is quite a serious phase for some people. And then part 2, you begin then to... I sometimes give the Peak Biotics and things in that and in phase 1 because it doesn't have a negative effect. But in phase 2, you then begin to increase your fermented foods in that phase. And then in phase 3, it's specific detox. It's a specific, how do I get rid of the toxins? Let's see what's next. So this is that's my original hierarchy of health. We've gone through toxins and we've talked through the gut. And so why do we get ill? We get ill because of the toxins. I hope we sort of, I hope I've convinced you maybe some of the way on that. And the toxins will affect the gut and of course water. And partly because the toxins are swimming around in that water. We are 70-80 depending on who you read percent water, and so our system is affected by the toxins that we take in. So I'll leave us with this quote before I answer some more questions. Do type in more questions, and it relates to focused intent again. In your own bosom, you bear your heaven and earth, and all you behold. Though it appears without, it is within. in your imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. All the sort of typo things are because that's the way they wrote in those days. But look, what I'm trying to say there is that it is, Vussi's right, it's not just about food, it is about how we think about our body. It's about how we are relating to the world, full stop. If we've got this negative self-talk going on, it will affect the functioning of our body. And so for me, it's one of the things that we should all be working on is how we are thinking about our bodies. So anyway, ask let me answer some more questions. Fire away if you have any questions. And was he saying sharing about the TEF, number of factors considered beyond food? Absolutely. And I think the thing is to find the thing that you can do that is the simplest, rather than trying to tackle everything. Is if it's I can go for a walk for 10 minutes a day, then do that. Go for that walk. If that's what you can do, go for the walk. Oops, what have I got? Got two of me. What else? So Martha's saying reducing the toxins in the environment seems overwhelming. Tips of where to start. Well, what do other people do? What are you all doing in terms of toxins in your environment? Which what are you doing for your own self? Well, look, there's one. Can you see that? It's my kombucha. Kombucha and the frequency and stuff like that for my EMFs. So that's a simple one, isn't it? Things like it depends on how radical you are. Things like you can wash your hair in kombucha. Right, start fermenting kombucha, do that first, because you can wash your hair in it rather than having all this rubbish that's in hair products and lotions, skin lotions and things like that. So if it depends on what's easy for you. I had a young lass who would get through 2 bottles of shampoo and conditioner in a week, and she had lots of toxins in her system. And so if you wear makeup, for example, you can switch to makeup which is non-toxic makeup. So you could do that. Pans, so stainless steel, those heavy metal stainless steel will leach nickel. You can perhaps, when it's time to switch pans or to get a new one, you get the one with a ceramic coating, something like that. You can switch your washing up liquids, your washing powders. You can switch your cleaning products, the soaps that you put on yourself. It's the same again. The pump liquid soaps tend to contain, if it contains basically more than five ingredients, and you can be quite sure that there's some rubbish in there. I should do a webinar on how to make hair products and skin products and stuff like that, because that is actually reasonably straightforward. You can brush your teeth with coconut oil with a tiny bit of bicarb, not too much, but you can do that instead. I looked once at some tooth paste and found that it had wheat and milk in it. Why on earth? What else? Great. I hope I've given you enough ideas. Other people can post what they do as well. I think that is it. So I'll wait to see if there's any more questions. I hope that was useful, guys. I hope it's making this whole thing about health and understanding your own health a bit simpler. So the next time will be about a month's time, and I'll then go through the next layer, which is that immunity layer. It's really exciting to be getting on the outside layers. But in the interim, next week I'm going to be doing Doc Essie's Kitchen again. And I thought I would yeah, you're just gonna have to wait and see what I've got on Doc X's Kitchen. I've got some really good, useful tips and stuff, and just show you how to make some, health giving foods as well. See what's hanging around there in my kitchen, fermenting away. So yes, do sign into that. Then I am lining up. I know I keep saying it, but I am lining up some really fantastic people to come and share their sort of non-food way of doing stuff. Dr. Stephen will be back. I think he's going to be back in a couple of weeks' time as well. And absolutely confirmed. Sue Bratchy will be coming at some point as well. So we've got some really exciting people coming on. So Yvonne, if you're living in a negative environment, it can be difficult to get ahead. That is so true. That is so true. And what I think is that we have to try to carve out space in our inner self. And when are those times? Those times might be just before bed, or when we wake up in the morning, when we go to the loo, when we're hanging out the washing, when we're ironing, or what have you, when we go to the shops. I believe that we've got to start cultivating new thoughts, new way of looking at the world. And if you I was on Kingdom Talks Media. I don't know if some of you would have watched that. I write it on here, Kingdom Talks Media. If you look on YouTube and type that in and type my name, I did a talk where I talk about Imagifeel. And Imagifeel for me is imagining yourself in a better position. Imagining and feeling yourself in a better position. There's a wonderful guy that talks about this. He's called Neville Goddard. Don't agree with everything he says, so don't come back at me. But he talks about how you can imagine and feel yourself in a different place. And so what we did today in our household was we imagined that we've been given this gift of a tree. It's called a tree of abundance. And on the tree were presents, a bit like the advent calendar, right? So on that tree, you can pick a present off the tree and open the door and see something nice about your future. But what you have to do is pick that present off the tree, open the door, and describe it to somebody else. Describe the scenario, the scene that you are living in the future. You have to describe it to somebody else. And it was really powerful to describe that. It's a bit like charades, where you have to actually describe the word. You can't just say, oh, I'm living a better life. You have to describe what's happening in that life. So I'm going for walks. I'm so happy that I'm beaming, and I can see that I'm glowing because I'm so happy. I can see people telling me, oh, you're so happy, you've changed, what's happened? Da, da, da. So that is a really good a really good little thing to do, Yvonne, with someone. Maybe just share it together, just to open that present from the tree of abundance. And the importance of that then is that you are framing up a new future. And Neville Goddard really is amazing in the testimonials that are given about doing that. And then you practice that. Yes, you're in a bad place, but practice framing up where you're going. I often say with my patients, I come alongside you on your journey, and I can help you on your journey, but you need to tell me where we're going. I often say, what does a good life look like to you? What does good look like to you? And that is about that tree, taking that present off the abundant tree and telling me what that good life, if that good life is all, but I know what I don't want. I don't want to be in pain anymore. I don't want to wake up and be in pain. I don't want to be hassled by this pain. It doesn't tell me where we're going. Actually, what you're doing is still facing the pain. And what I end up doing is walking round and round in circles with you around your pain. Whereas what I want to know is, where are we going? And I'll help you get there. We're going to this wonderful place. So we have to, I believe, this whole lockdown thing for me has been about rethinking what I'm looking at, and learning how to look from that place of abundance. So I don't know whether that's helpful for anyone, but Yvonne, thank you for putting that on there, because I think I think maybe it's going to help others too. So back to the mundane. So there's a good toothpaste from Young Living with thieves, yeah, and natural non-toxic cosmetics. Yeah, those I can't tell you because I don't wear cosmetics, but I'm sure there are others that can. Good. Excellent. I think that's enough. I think we're over the hour again. So Regina saying a lot change in a life by affirmations, despite circumstances. So yeah, so guys, I think that's going to be enough now. Join me next week for Doc Essie's Kitchen. Do sign up. Do share with share the newsletters with your friends. Get them to sign up also, and I'll see you next week. That's it for now, everyone. Remember, change starts with you. Be well.